Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming at you live from episode 34 of Life on the Rocks with your host, Connor Rocques. Today's featured guest in the hot seat is my good friend, Nihad Hasanefendic. How are you, my friend?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing really good. It's an absolute pleasure to have Nihad on the show, the first police officer we're actually bringing in. So for anyone who doesn't know Nihad, what's your current position? So you're a police officer, but it's on behalf of the youth. Explain that for me for a second.
So my formal title is a school resource officer.
School resource officer,
Yes,
okay.
And I work in the community mobilization unit. So I'm basically in a specialty unit, and I'm signed to work strictly with schools.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So I work with the high schools only. That's my portfolio, and I have a partner that I share that portfolio with. So in Sudbury we have we have over 20 high schools,
Okay.
and I'm responsible for 12 high schools. My partner has the other 10 plus schools.
Wow.
And then we have another officer that deals with the elementary schools.
Okay.
And then we have a civilian community safety personnel that helps that officer with the elementary schools.
Okay, that's great.
So-
What got you started in general as a police officer? Was that always your direction in life? Did you want to become a police officer? For anyone else who doesn't know, Nihad is also European, so you're from a different country as well. So he was formerly Yugoslavia, correct? And then
That's right.
now Bosnia, right?
Yes.
Or when did you move here?
Approximately 20 some years ago.
No kidding, so
yeah,
long enough?
Yeah, long enough. So I was born in, at the time it was known as Yugoslavia.
Mhm.
Now it's known as Bosnia because of the civil war. It got separated into different countries. What happened is we lived there, had a pretty good life. Because of the war, my family was forced to leave and flee. So we lived in Macedonia for a bit of our life. We spent almost 5 years there, and after that we came to Canada.
Oh, wow.
So I've been in Canada for over 20 years.
No kidding, yeah.
Lived in Quebec for almost 10.
Oh, wow. Do you
And
speak
then-
French too?
Yes, I speak French.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then I've been in Sudbury for roughly 13 years.
Oh, nice.
So I came to Cambridge College for 2 years, and I've been on the police service for 11 years now.
Oh, okay, so you studied police foundations at Cambridge.
I did, yeah.
What got you into going into police foundations? Was that always the direction? You always wanted to be a police officer?
It's funny because I get that. I get asked that question often enough. And it's not an easy answer because it kind of fluctuated, right? As you grow up, your interest changes.
Definitely.
But I want to, the one memory that comes to light is when I was young and I was in Macedonia. And I remember being at a family gathering, right, with my parents. So there was some friends there, family friends and whatnot. And I remember there wasn't too many kids, it was mainly adults. But I remember at one point there was this gentleman that came in, right? And he came in with a suit and he looked super cool. He was very friendly, very approachable, and he was a detective.
Oh, wow,
Right?
yeah.
And for me at that particular moment, he was the coolest guy ever.
Yeah,
And he
okay.
came in, he had a little badge, had his side gun and had handcuffs. So of course, being a young guy, I was very curious about it. So I asked him if I could, check out his handcuffs, and he took out his handcuffs. He showed it to me, and it was another friend of my parents that actually volunteered to put the handcuffs on me.
Oh, wow,
right?
yeah.
So he put, I was excited, right? So he put handcuffs on me and whatnot. And so what happens is he puts the handcuffs on me, but doesn't realize that the detective doesn't have keys.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so when the detective realized that he put the handcuffs on, he goes, "What are you doing? I don't carry keys because if I'm going to put handcuffs on somebody, I'm bringing him to the station,
Exactly,
right?"
yeah.
So, anyways, that memory sticks with me, right? And it's still in my mind. And that happened probably, I want to say, 25 years ago.
20, no kidding, yeah.
Right. So I think that triggered the interest. And then when I was in Quebec and I was going through, I was actually taking college. I was taking pre-med in
nice.
Quebec. I met a good friend of mine who was taking police foundations in Quebec, and he told me about the program and some of the benefits of having a career in policing. And then it got my interest kind of
Peaked out, yeah.
peaked out again. And
Yeah.
then I decided to apply to Cambridge College, and I got into police foundations, and the rest is kind of like history, right?
Were you like most students where it was very difficult to get in to actually become a police officer? Or being that you were a little bit different, it was a little bit easier for you, you speak French, then obviously you're from Europe, so it kind of gives you a little bit more of a twist on your resume.
Yeah, it was personally it was challenging for me, but it was easy as well.
Yeah.
Right. So challenging in the way that I went to college in Quebec. Right, I took pre-med and I didn't do really well, right? Because I wasn't really passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
So when I came to Cambridge, I really had to focus, right? I lived on res, but I still studied hard.
Definitely,
right?
yeah.
I actually devoted a lot of my free time to academics, right?
Definitely.
And I was able to graduate with 4.0.
Wow.
Get some, I received the Governor General's Academic Medal
Nice.
from Cambridge. So I put a lot of effort into it. And then after I graduated, I started applying to a couple of police services, and I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to get on within roughly 3 to 4 months after my initial application.
Seriously.
So it was a good path for me when it came to the hiring process.
No,
so I was very,
absolutely.
very lucky.
I meet so many students and other people that I've dealt with, and you know, and I make the joke and don't like I use the wrong word, but I see the only ones that get on are my friends that are killers, like the ones that they're lifting so much weights, they're so strong in school 4.0, and there's only a select few of them that actually get in. Where I've seen at least like 25 people that are really good candidates not be able to get in. So it's actually incredible to see you be able to push back within 3 months. There's been people applying for 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And
right?
I was very lucky. I was in my early 20s. And I was fortunate, you know, and I was applying with a couple of different services. You gotta, you know, I was leaving my doors open, right? But Sudbury's the one that I really wanted, and I lucked out, and they offered me a position here, and I accepted it, of course.
No,
right?
absolutely. Do you have any advice for anybody out there, especially people trying to apply? I think this is really important for people trying to get onto the force. Like, you know, like I said, I've seen several. Like, this is a big question people are asking. Like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what is the secret to be able to get on the police force, or at least kind of get into that interview and make it worth your while?
The one thing I can suggest is that you have to remember that it is a competitive process, right?
Definitely.
There's only a few jobs out there, careers in the policing world, right? So you're competing against everybody else who wants the same position, right? So you have to make that extra effort, whether you know it's academically or you know volunteer work or you know language skills,
definitely,
life skills, maturity level. So you have to bring something extra that will make you stand out more compared to the other candidate.
It's
right?
so true. Yeah.
So whatever that special sauce you see,
exactly,
like
whatever,
might be, it depends on the person, right?
Definitely.
But it is definitely a competitive process. You know, when you got to consider, sometimes you have 1,000 applicants, right? And they're only looking for one or two. So you got to be it, right? You got to be that one person that stands out and has all these extra qualities that you can bring.
It's so true, especially, and then a lot of time too, like I see maybe this is a different part of it too, when you actually get into the interview, some people can't talk, right? They're not like big communicators, their resume, everything looks good, and then they're going in there and kind of shake the hand, and I've seen that a lot of times too in other ways.
And it's funny they say that because I had a couple of friends that went through the process and they had similar issues where, you know, on paper they look great, but when it came to the interviewing, they were having difficulties expressing themselves and you know, for lack of better words, selling themselves.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So I believe there's courses out there that you can take where they would help you with your interviewing and whatnot.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. It's basically give the people what they want is what I try to tell people when I'm an interview. You know, in a sense, it's like, what are you really good at? You never, like, you know, you see a lot of students, like we both deal with students, right? So you see a lot of them, they're giving away too much information. It's like, no, focus on these things. It's like, I can do anything. Like, I would go into interviews sometimes and I would tell them, and I was dead serious. I looked up the interview in the eyes when I got hired at TD Bank, and I'm like, I'll literally work 12-hour days. I said, you could literally give me the sheet that you guys have legally so that I can go in and work a 12-hour shift. So right away, I've distinguished myself, and then that's what I'm trying to teach a lot of students.
Yeah.
As for yourself, like, did you apply specifically for being a student resource for them, or did you go in as a police officer first, then you get a position, work with students?
Yeah, so the way it works, this is considered a specialty unit. So initially when you get hired, you start as a constable, and there's different levels, you know, 4th class, 3rd class, 2nd class, and 1st class, so you got to go through that process. After you get to 1st class, which is the top class for constable, then you have opportunities and options to specialize, right? So whether it's if you want to go on to, you know, a canine unit, tactical unit, school officer unit, detective, there's a lot of options out there. So as those positions become available, you submit your interest, right? And depending on what position it is, there's different criteria. You get an opportunity to be selected, right? But even then, right, you could be applying, you know, with several other officers that are applying for the same position. So you got to bring something to the table that perhaps they don't have, right?
Here's my numbers, you know, right? You got everything back.
So you have to, you know, you have to stand out, right? And that's just life in general. I think you got to put the extra effort in. Be different, right?
Or go ahead.
And no, and being different is such a cool way to say it, because really, I truly believe that being different is the way to go, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes when you're younger, you want to fit in and you want to be like everybody else, but I believe that being different is the way to go, and you have a lot more power by being different.
It's so true in that same context that, you know what I mean, no one's you, right? At the end of the day, like, whatever you're thinking inside your head, like, nobody is you in that sense. So that the more you kind of put yourself out there, that's when you start to shine. And you'll never know if you're not kind of trying to let your originality shine. Like, you could say something really stupid and think, oh my God, everyone's judging me. All of a sudden, everyone's laughing. They're having a good time, right? And that's, I find, not enough students where I'm researching is that they're scared of that judgment factor, somebody judging them. And it's like, how do you get over that barrier? And I'm trying to work with different students, and it's the same with yourself. Like, How come they bring? I'm just curious. Like this is something I'm just thinking about. Was there problems at the school where they had to bring in police officers just to keep an eye, or was it just one of those resources that they wanted to have you guys around as mentors? Like, was that why they initiated the program?
Yeah, so I don't know why they initially started the program, but I can tell you the way the program is being run right now is to build positive relationships with young people. That's our main objective and our main goal when we go to schools.
Definitely.
Right? It's not to do enforcement, right? I mean, we can do enforcement, we're police, right? But our main objective is to build those relationships, eliminate some of those barriers, right? Some of those stereotypes that exist out there, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've noticed a change over the last, I've been doing this for two and a half years roughly now. And I've noticed, because it used to be the first time I pulled up to a high school, it was like, oh no, the cops are here. Who's in trouble? Who's getting arrested, right? And now it's like when I pull up to some of my high schools, they go, oh, Nihad's here. Right, exactly, so you walk the hallways and they give you high fives. How's it going? How's your weekend and stuff like that, right? So you're changing that culture, right? That stereotype where you think the police are there only for bad things, but in fact the police are there to help, right?
No,
exactly. That's our main objective.
Well, exactly, and you guys are just people like us, right? But obviously with the authority that you have to make sure everyone's protected and taken care of. And also, one of the things I want to ask, so obviously, like on your Instagram thread, like you got the tattoos too. Like, as a police officer, when you're getting hired, do they encourage that? Like, they don't mind. Like, it doesn't reflect anything. Like, I know certain jobs, if you're going to be a lawyer, you can't have a tattoo on your neck. Like, do they say anything when you're getting hired, or do you cover up?
Our policies. So when I got hired, I didn't have any tattoos. So I got the tattoos after the fact. And our policies, each police service has their own rules and regulations, right? So each service has their own policies and procedures. So I believe our policies in regards to tattoos changed roughly, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I'm taking an estimate here. Yeah. So it's fairly fresh, right? Where police officers before were allowed to have tattoos, but they were not allowed to show them.
Oh wow!
Right?
Yeah.
So things have changed since then. Now you're allowed to show your tattoos as long as they're not offensive.
No, exactly.
Right? And we still have limitations in regards to neck tattoos and face tattoos, so that's still not allowed. But tattoos on your arms, are permitted, again, as long as they're not deemed to be offensive.
No, absolutely,
vulgar and stuff
discriminatory
like that.
Discriminatory, some really bad.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to change gears for a second. So you also do a lot of speaking around the city too. So you work primarily with the youth, so high school students. That's your market, right?
So like I said, I have 12 high schools. So I have 9 full-time high schools, and I have 3 alternative high schools. I do mainly the French high schools, and I do a couple English schools. So I have the French Catholic board, French Public board, and both English boards. So the English Catholic board and the English Public board. But most of my schools are French schools.
Okay, that's good. And what are you doing primarily with some of these students? You're just working as a mentor. Like obviously you do your resource side, but like the extra stuff you do it's mentorship style.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm there as a resource for both the students and the school, right?
Oh, that's great.
So for the school, for example, they can invite me or ask me to do a presentation, an education piece, right? Let's say if they're seeing there's issues with whether it's bullying or or sexting, that's a fairly hot topic these days, right? They might ask me to come in and do a presentation and give that education piece to the young people, right? And explain some of the consequences, both about in regards to healthy relationships and also in regards to what the laws say when it comes to stuff like that, right? So I mean, I've done presentations where it's a small classroom of 25 students to a full assembly, where you get 400 or 500 students, right? So I've done a little bit of both, yeah.
Do you how do you find it like in terms of relating to the students? Do you find it difficult sometimes, or you just kind of try to keep it on their level? Like some of the students, obviously, you're gonna always get the ones that are, I don't want to listen. As police officer here, like how do you relate to some of these students? Like what are some of the things you do personally?
Well, I try to get them to know me on a personal level in the sense that they I want them to see me beyond the uniform.
Definitely,
right? Yeah. And I understand it's important for me to recognize that the uniform is a barrier sometimes,
yeah.
Right? And it is intimidating for some people, right? I've gotten used to it. I've been wearing it for 11 years, but like when I walk into a room, whether it's a room of young people or adults, the uniform is a presence, right?
So true.
So what I try to do is just talk, right? It's about communication. When the moment you start talking to somebody and you make that connection, it's so much easier to see that person beyond their physical appearance, right?
Yeah.
You get to know them intellectually, emotionally, right? And you're able to build that connection and relationship.
I think that's huge. And what are you starting to see? So besides like the bullying piece and the sexting, what are some of the biggest obstacles you're observing, on the kind of like the front line of it with these students that they're facing? Like, is it maybe, a lack of clarity, a lack of commitment towards something? They don't really know what they want because we're swarmed with this instant gratification. That phone's in our hand all the time. It's just taking our attention.
And technology is very very much present in our daily lives, right? And I'm actually very pro technology, right? However, the reality is technology can also have negative effects. right? And we see it with cyberbullying. Right?
It's so true.
We see it with our young people. So we try to be proactive, right?
Definitely,
preventative, and try to give them some of the tools so they can avoid getting into that negative, side of cyber world. Because there's the negative side and there's the positive, right? So you've probably seen my social media accounts, right? It's all positive, right?
I love it, yeah.
And if we do positive, and I follow you as well, it's all about the positive, right? So
Yeah.
if we put the more positive we put, the better it is.
No, exactly. There's enough crap in the world that's very negative, and it's just we keep getting bombarded with it. So that's why I'm trying to start lots of stuff like you meet people like ourselves that can show that you can make a difference in a positive light.
Absolutely.
So
the one thing that we really try to work when it comes to young people is to build their resiliency.
Oh, okay,
right?
nice.
Resiliency is very, very important, and it's hard to get to that good resiliency when you're young.
Yeah.
Right.
Strong.
And it's not like a lot of people assume or think, right, that resiliency is just that group of friends that you have, right? But the reality is that group of friends is important, but it's a very small component of the big picture, right?
So true.
So I'm trying to make them understand that there's people out there that are outside your friend circle that really, really care. Right, whether it's your coach, basketball coach, a hockey coach, whether it's your parents, whether it's that police officer, teacher, principal, yourself too. When you go in as a motivational speaker, right, there's people that care, and the bigger your circle it is, the more resilient you are.
It's
right?
so true.
The faster you bounce back when things happen, because you know how it is. Everybody falls, right?
Absolutely.
Even we as adults, we have bad days, we fall, right? But we're
Working
able to
hard.
bounce back. We're able to
Yeah.
bounce back faster because we have that circle of care, right? That resiliency.
It's so true.
So that's what we try to. That's what I try to, push with the students.
Incorporate with a lot of your stuff.
Yeah.
And you do obviously motivational speaking too, like with all that stuff, like with all that's kind of motivational based, like it's all motivational regardless, but like
it's a lot
you
of
ever
relationship building. Yes, a lot of trying to make a positive influence in their life.
No,
right?
absolutely.
And I try to, in that process, I try to share my story, right? And I've had that opportunity to share it one-on-one. I also had an opportunity to share it with Sudbury here. With Sudbury Star, it was a good article about my life story, right?
Absolutely,
and I'm actually very proud of it. It's because it shows that in my particular case, I was born in what people would consider a privilege, right? I was in a privileged family, right? I had everything, wealthy family, but we lost it all, right? So we went from wealthy to very poor, right? We were on social welfare. Right.
Oh, yeah.
My parents, they went to secondhand stores and bought my clothing there, and all that
Really?
stuff.
Wow.
So we experienced the both end, right? We were never homeless, but we were refugees at one point too. So technically, yes, we were homeless, right? We're not living on the street, but we didn't have a home, right? And now we're back, almost where we were because we work hard. So I've kind of, it's been life's been kind of like a roller coaster in a way, right?
Up and down.
So and I try to share that with the young people because it's not easy being a young person these days. There's a lot of obstacles and challenges in life, right?
A lot of things that people, a lot of people, it's like almost as if all the eyes are on you because you have the social media and then the narcissism's kind of the rage rising on that end of it. What I wanted to ask you, this is actually because I was thinking about that as you're telling me your story. Like guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Have you studied him online? So he's an entrepreneur on there. He's a very straightforward, in-your-face kind of thinker, and he was an immigrant himself.
Okay.
Would you argue that part of your success, like a massive part of it, he calls it immigrant hustle. I know it's like a bad term, but immigrant hustle, he says that a lot of the reason for his success is that he obviously had good parents, but it was because he was an immigrant that it allowed him to work that much harder and beat out everybody else. Would you argue that's a massive part of your success, being that you're an immigrant?
I think my parents had a huge role to play in it, right? And perhaps the immigrant side had something to do with it because you have to consider when we immigrated to Canada, right? My parents gave up everything that they had for us, right?
Yeah.
So there's that piece, there's that motivation, right? Realizing that your parents care so much about you, and they're willing to give away everything, right, for your future, right?
Absolutely.
So it makes you want to work that much harder,
No,
right,
exactly,
to be successful for yourself and also for your family.
No,
right?
exactly. I was always curious because I always hear he's someone I follow, one of the influencers, and he's always talking about being an immigrant and how he used that as a motivation.
And I heard that, and it's funny. I was watching, Shark Tank?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right, and one of the fellas on there from Croatia. That's sort of his story, where his parents immigrated from Croatia, came here, right, and he lost his parents lost everything, right. They were working in a factory, sweeping the factory, right, and his motivation, among many other things, was to make his parents proud, right. So he worked really hard. And now he's a multi-millionaire.
That's Herjavec, right? Yeah, Mr. Herjavec,
yes.
I knew. I was thinking about it. I remember he's the one European on the board.
Yes.
As a police officer, did you ever think about, this is always an interesting question for all the gentlemen out there, did you ever think about going into the SWAT team?
I did. Yeah.
I'm wondering, because like as me, like one of those people very extreme. Like I would think if I was to be a police officer, I'm like down the line, I'd want to be a SWAT team member.
Yeah. No, I did, and I was fortunate enough. Actually, recently I had an opportunity to be part of the process. I was shortlisted. Unfortunately, due to some injuries, I was unable to finish the process. It is a very, very difficult and selective process. Right, but it was an amazing opportunity for me to compete in that.
I can only
process.
imagine.
Yeah, because I'll tell you the officers that we have on our tactical team, they are some of the best trained officers in our province.
Really well.
Right? They're absolutely in amazing physical shape, mental shape. Right, they're smart and extremely well trained. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
So to even have an opportunity at that position, I was very fortunate.
That is really to go
really,
compete against some of the best.
Yeah, it was very cool. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you, especially being that you're a police officer. There's a select mentality, I guess, that goes associated with it. Talk to me about some of the mental training they teach you guys as police officers with discipline and just some of the perseverance. Like, talk about that, like what they teach you in some of your training in terms of mental training.
I'm not sure what exactly you're looking for, but I think
make a tough mind, like stronger mentally.
Yeah, it's not the regular training. It's not like something you would see on TV, right?
Yeah.
It is when you go to police college. It is kind of like school, right? There's the academic portion. There's also the physical portion, but most of your mental training and mental toughness comes from life experience and experience on the job, right?
Perfect.
So they used to say, remember when I started, it would take you about 4 or 5 years before you get really comfortable, right? And before you see some stuff, and I've been on for 11 years and still a lot of stuff that I haven't seen, right? And I remember starting as a rookie, and I'm like, I'm smart. I graduated in the top 90s. I know all my laws. I was able to recite, some of the criminal code definitions like that, right? Yeah. Thinking I know everything, but really, it really truly does take you a couple of years before you try to start understanding how to do the job properly, right?
No,
and that's where life experience comes into play, right? And that's when they hire officers. They look people who have not just the academic component, but they also need to have that
practical
stuff, right?
Yeah, I was always curious about that because, like, being a martial artist, I was always thinking like it's all about the mentality behind it. Some of these guys walk in, they're very, like a Thai, like you take a Thai fighter, right? They're very disciplined fighters, opposed to some other people that are kind of reckless or whatever it is. And I was always thinking like how they kind of train you guys to get in there and go. There was just a question I just had came to my head, being like, are you still? And this obviously you don't have to answer this in the full context, but is there still that nervousness and that fear every day when you're on the job? Like you never know, like somebody can go out there. You never know if someone has a weapon, whatever it is. Like
those are always the risks of the job, right?
Yeah.
And there have been many situations where those risks were real, right? For me personally, you always hope that never happens, but these things happen, right? The one thing you gotta always like role play in your head and be prepared for it, and your training will help you, right? So we train, and we train often. You train at the beginning, and you constantly train and retrain, and right. So you prepare for the worst, but you obviously want to deal with the best.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah. So that's how I approach the job.
Stay prepared.
Yeah.
It's more, I guess, the more you get in the environment, it's like in other training, like the more you spar, and then you get into the actual ring, like it kind of prepares you for the worst. And like things can happen to anybody, right? I could walk outside, get hit by a car.
Absolutely.
Any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. The one thing I've noticed is what helped me in the last 11 years is the communication. Right?
Oh, definitely.
You can do so much more by talking to somebody than with some of the use of force, right? I mean, there are certain situations that doesn't work, right? But generally speaking, communication is a key part, and a lot of our officers are extremely well versed in communicating, right, with the public, so they do an exceptional job, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Does that come in the context of trying to keep yourself as like a chameleon per se? You know what I mean? Trying to be able to adapt to people. So you see a guy who's really frustrated and angry, before you start using force, like you kind of just they teach you guys.
You have to listen, right? At the end of the day, you got to listen, right? You have to understand that there's a reason why people are acting a certain way, right? And you're there to help. That's the biggest thing. And when you go into any type of call that I go into, the first thing that I'm thinking is obviously, officer safety and public safety, but we're there to help, right? At the end of the day, we're there to help because somebody called us to help, right?
Definitely.
For whether it's the person, the victim themselves, or an innocent bystander, right? Or a witness, we're there to help.
Definitely. Okay. I was just curious about that. And the one last question I got to ask, it's just super important since I have a lot of martial arts friends out there.
Sure.
How's the combat training? When they're training you guys as combat, like do you hand-on-hand weapon training? How's that work? I just had to ask if you can talk about it.
And I don't blame you for asking, but I can't unfortunately tell you what our defensive tactics are, right?
For sure.
But there's training involved, right?
Yeah.
That's that has nothing to do with me. Actually, we have a training branch that they're the ones who do all the training, right?
I had to ask you because you see some of these even UFC fighters that were, at one time a police officer, now they're fighting in a cage, right? So I was just curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have, when I was at police college, there was a lot of officers or cadets at the time who came from different backgrounds. One of my pod mates, one of my roommates at the time, he was a professional basketball player from Europe.
Really? Wow.
Right, so it was pretty cool. And then we had a couple of hockey players that played, almost made it to the NHL, and so it's really interesting to see all the different backgrounds, right? And
yeah.
You have anything from military to teachers to pro sport athletes. It's very, very cool.
No kidding, Doc. That's really interesting. Yeah, everyone's got the story coming in from somewhere.
That's where like I said, it's a competitive process, and it's something about you has to be different than the next person, the person next to you, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I got my 80-degree average in this, and it's like, okay, we all have about 4,500 other applicants like that. So yeah, what's different? And that's the common thread I've seen as well. But one of the last important things I wanted to ask you, Nihad, was as a police officer, you're obviously active on social media, so you're going out there, and you don't see that a lot of days, I guess, in Sudbury. What's one of the most important pieces when marketing yourself to the public on social media that you do personally, just to kind of keep the positivity? What specifically is that you do?
Well, one of the best things that before we post is you approach the think principle, right? You use the think principle. What you think, is it truthful, right? Is it hurtful? Is it illegal, right? Is it kind, and is it necessary, and is it kind, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if you apply if you apply that principle, then your post should be that much better, right? And then if you apply those principles and you only focus on the positivity, then your posts on social media are a win.
Exactly,
right? Yeah. And what I try to do is I try to promote. Not necessarily myself, but promote the schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go out there and I'll take pictures with the students, and but it's about the students, right? Because you'll be surprised, our schools are actually doing tons of amazing stuff, right? And I find they don't get enough publicity out there.
You're right. Yeah.
They don't get recognized for some of the amazing stuff that they do, right? So when I get an opportunity, when I get invited by the schools, hey, come out, we're doing this event and that event, come and hang out with us or whatever, and check it out. And I try to document that and show it to the rest of the city, right? Hey, this is what's happening, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
This is the positivity, because there's a lot of negativity. If you want to find negativity, it won't be hard. But I find if you want to find positivity, you almost have to work twice as hard to find it on social media, right?
That's a great point, yeah.
So that's what I try to do. I try to focus all my posts and all my engagement on social media on positivity.
Exactly, yeah, kind of getting the positive message across. The last question I want to ask you, and I always ask everybody this, so you're working with the schools, obviously police officer, what can we expect next from you, Nihad?
Well, I'm expecting to see you at the end of the month for Courage to Stand run, right?
There we go.
So we
have
right
right into the camera.
Yeah, so we have on Friday the 27th, we have our second annual Courage to Stand run. It's a run to bring awareness against bullying, right? So we're trying to avoid the word bullying, so we're using Courage to Stand. So it's our second annual one. The first one was very successful. It was done in the Valley. We had a limited number of students because it was our pilot project. We had roughly 100 students. This year we're looking at 250 to 300 students from all of the school boards here in Sudbury. So we have the 4 school boards, and we're going to have roughly 7 to 8 different schools. Most of them will be high schools. There will be at least one elementary school. We call it Courage to Stand and Pink Glove Initiative because of these pink gloves. So it's an innovative concept that we as a team came up with last year, and we thought about something. We were trying to think of a new way to bring the message, right, but also to engage the young people. And traditionally that the pink shirt is well known across the world, right, and internationally as the anti-bullying shirt, right?
Exactly, yeah.
The color pink, and wearing a pink shirt. So we have actually pink uniforms that we bring out to the elementary schools.
Really?
Right?
Wow.
And we do presentations with the elementary level, and the students get an opportunity to pledge to be standing for courage and be against bullying. So they sign the uniforms, and the uniforms stay in the schools, right, at the elementary level. So at the high schools, because I work with high schools, I was trying to figure out another way to interact and engage the young people, right? And I didn't feel like the uniforms were going to be a big hit, right? So I figured, why don't we come up with the gloves, right? Pink gloves, because they're cool, right? And then it also brings up the whole concept of the handshake, right? The value of the handshake, right? And when you think about it traditionally, the handshake is still one of the most powerful symbolic things in our culture, right?
That's so true.
Because it conveys that message of trust, right? Balance, right? Equality and respect, right? So we came up with this idea, we'll give them the pink gloves, and if they're willing to, to make that pledge to be against bullying, right, and stand for courage, they shake on it, right? So our gloves on one side have the courage to stand, right? Yeah. And on the other side is the message, shake on it, right?
I like that,
So all the students that will be running on October 27th will be given a pair of gloves. They'll be running with the gloves, and if they're willing to be with us and stand for courage, they'll be shaking on it.
Absolutely,
with the pink
I like
gloves.
that. No, I think that's huge.
And I appreciate you. I know we already spoke. You said you'll be coming and joining us, and
definitely.
And I think it'll be exciting. Maybe I'll have a chance to beat you this.
Yeah, I was gonna tell him. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, he was right behind me, and then I don't know what happened. I got that Tony Robbins motivation came out of nowhere.
I slowed down.
Yeah, he did too. I knew he was a police officer, so I was going back to my youth days. I was running. I'm just kidding. That's good. But honestly, I got to admit, you've done an exceptional job in the city of Sudbury, and especially getting out there with the youth. We need people like you to be able to go out and push a message. And for me, I like to, the students need a boot in the rear end. I make the joke, but someone like you as an influential figure, it's great to see. Seriously, you've done a great job, and hopefully I'm never on the other end of this one day. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks. Pleasure, man.
Awesome.